section of the topic before we've got two final dot points in the next section, which is mainly concerned with Athens and Sparta. We're looking at the key democratic developments in this period. Here are some terms and concepts. A few tricky words on this one. So a bit of a background to power and the government type in Athens. In the early period, we had kings, so a monarchy, and this disappears kind of earlier than in other spots. And they move towards an aristocracy, which we have covered before, which essentially an aristocracy is, rather than in the power of one person or one family like a monarchy or a royal family, power is held amongst the rich / the noble birth. So it's a similar kind of idea, but rather than one person holding the power, it's a small group of the rich and noble birthed people that essentially hold all the power. So this essentially, they have the same powers of kings, but it's just shared amongst the three magistrates known as the archons. And there was the archon Polemarch, the archon Basilius, and the archon Eponymous. Okay, and they had their various functions in Athenian society. Over time, we see 6 more officials come in that essentially ends up becoming like a board of 9 archons. So that's the Thesmothety. And if you pronounce it wrong, it doesn't matter. If you spell it wrong, it doesn't matter, as long as a marker could see what you were going for. And your 6 additional ones don't necessarily have the same amount of power here. They're kind of monitoring over smaller judicial type cases and keeping records of their decisions and stuff like that. What it is a process of is the weakening of the power of the aristocracy over time. So you've got the People's Assembly, which is essentially Athenian citizens, your ecclesia, and they don't really have any power at all at this stage. So over time, the influence of the Thetes grows. The Thetes were the rowers of the Athenian navy. So they're the ones, they're not necessarily in charge of the vessels, but they're the ones that are in the trireme ships, and they're controlling the water, they're protecting trade, they're attacking enemies, they're manning the big fleets of the Athenians. So from a social standing, they're actually quite low. They're not very high up on the social hierarchy, but they consist of quite a large number. And obviously they'd proven themselves at the Battle of Salamis, and they're quite recognised after that, and they've almost become not legendary, but for what they accomplished there. And they're obviously also assisting in that Delian League / growth of your Athenian Empire, controlling the waters and stuff like that. So they really do have a bit of an influence that grows, and they start to realise what their power is. And they obviously, because without them, your Athenians can't stay in power without your ships. So they come to kind of want more and more say, they want more and more influence, and politicians recognise this and kind of think, well, if I don't keep the Thetes happy, this group of men in society happy, or keeping them happy will help me increase my political standing. So even if you think about a politician today, thinking about, which parts of the country or the state or, a group of people like the elderly or women or a particular ethnic background that they're targeting, so they can try and increase their, influence and their popularity. So the use of ostracism grows. We've kind of covered this briefly, but this essentially grows in the period as well. The ostracism is essentially people would go in and get a piece of ostrakon, and they would carve someone's name in it that they wished to be exiled for 10 years from the city. And yeah, that's essentially what happened. Whoever really had the most votes could be exiled. The original purpose of this was to protect democracy so that no one person could gain too much power. If one person had too much power, and everyone could get together, vote to ostracize someone, and then that would keep their power in check. So quite good intentions early on. But it essentially, as we've seen with Themistocles and stuff like that, it becomes this kind of tactic for getting rid of your opponents, as he does with Aristides, as he does with Xanthippus. and later on Chiron and stuff like that. So as Athens gets richer and as Athens improves in its democratic kind of policies and lifestyles and stuff like that, you've also got more opportunities for the regular person to participate in their government. Remember, prior to this, it was aristocratic. So your regular person doesn't really do much and everything's just kind of run by the rich and powerful. But as Athens is getting richer, the regular person is getting, and the politician is kind of campaigning for, no, we should all get a vote here, it should be fair. So more people can participate in government, which means they've got to get paid. Obviously, there's a problem with that because you're creating more jobs to need more money. You need the money. So Pericles, who's very much in favor of democracy and power going to the masses, he starts to try and not correct himself, but cater to that. So he wants to restrict the benefits of working for the government and being paid to Athenians. So he introduces some laws that essentially make some rights for those with Athenian parents. There's some other things as well we're going to cover in class, but having Athenian parents essentially makes you an Athenian citizen. And it's worth noting that Athenian women benefited of this. So rather than Athenian men seeking, foreign women or whatever else, it was beneficial for them to marry and have children with an Athenian woman, so their children could therefore be citizens, and potentially run for office or whatever. And don't forget the cleriches that we went over last lesson. So this is a Periclean idea, and these settlements of Athenian citizens, it deals with overpopulation, and this therefore raises the standard of living. If you are less cluttered with people who are poor, who are looking for jobs, who are unemployed, all of that kind of stuff, that also makes things much better. So the cleriches, don't know why I struggle with that, gives Athens a chance to kind of succeed and So they can ask you the impact of the Persian Wars on democracy. If you can see here, the ones that if you have a look at the left side, this is what happens in the Persian War. Then we're going over what's changed, and then we're going over the impact of that. So I'm not necessarily just going to read it out to you, but just something to know. The generals, the strategoi, that's people like Themistocles and stuff like that, because of what they did, kind of got more responsibility and more power, which ultimately, as we've spoken over, the power of the archons weakens. Okay? Most of these essentially takes away power from the archons. So the last thing that I am going to comment on is because Athenian wealth and power grows during the war, they get more money. The more money you have, you can therefore pay to benefit your society and benefit the people in your society. And then obviously Pericles, he needs to try and limit that to who these benefits are going to actually be afforded to. And also the idea of for people in Athens to be free and people for Athens to have all these awesome benefits, it kind of required people elsewhere to be enslaved or at the mercy of Athenian imperialism. So they're kind of the good guy in their home territory because they're not being so great to people outside of Athens. So that's just something to consider. And also, I should have said this before, the strategoi were an elected office. So once again, this is further limiting the power of the archons.